Playboy twins as warrior sisters, 46 breasts in one movie, and a box office hit that critics still called inept. So today, as you probably already guessed, we are talking about the Conan imitators of the 1980s, sword and sorcery movies with tiny budgets and a lot of babes. Let's start with Sorceress, because this is almost the perfect opening statement for the entire post-Conan fantasy boom. And by perfect, I do not mean good. Sorceress was made for Roger Corman's New World Pictures after the success of Conan the Barbarian. It was shot quickly in Mexico and released before the end of the same year. Behind the camera was Jack Hill. If you've seen some of my recent videos, you may remember him from Spider Baby. He also directed two Pam Grier classics, Coffee and Foxy Brown. The plot is technically about twin sisters, Mara and Mira, who are raised as warriors and hunted by their evil father, Trigon, because he needs to sacrifice his firstborn child to keep his powers. Since they are twins, the movie gets to build an entire fantasy mythology around the idea that they are two who are one, which mostly means that whenever something happens to one sister, the other one feels it too. The twins are played by Lee and Lynette Harris, former Playboy models, and the film knows exactly why they are there. By the way, the title is a little dishonest. The film was originally called The Barbarian Women, which at least roughly describes what happens on screen. But Corman reportedly market-tested a few titles, and Sorceress scored better. So Sorceress it became, even though the movie does not really have a sorceress. Once the movie actually gets moving, it has sword fights, terrible outfits, cheap special effects, and a strange dubbed quality that makes it feel like a foreign film. For some reason, that only makes it more enjoyable. Next we have The Sword and the Sorcerer, also from 1982. Critics were not exactly gentle with this one. The New York Times reportedly called it nonsensical and inept. Variety complained about the lackluster script and the atrocity-a-minute action, and Roger Ebert gave it half a star, calling it basically an identikit movie. Which sounds bad, obviously. But then the movie cost about $4 million and made around $39 million at the box office. So at some point, what are we really arguing about? Swords, evil sorcerers, and half-naked women did their job. The plot follows Talon, a mercenary prince with one of the stupidest and coolest weapons in the whole genre, a three-bladed sword that can shoot its blades like projectiles. He gets pulled into a rebellion against the tyrant Titus Cromwell, who has taken over the kingdom with help from the resurrected sorcerer Zusha. There is a rebel princess, a lost royal bloodline, revenge, torture chambers, glowing eyes, and a lot of men yelling in rooms full of candles. Some of it looks great. And if you ever caught it on cable late at night, it is almost impossible to think it is not cool. Roger Corman, never one to let an opportunity pass, kept producing new sword and sorcery movies, often with posters that promised slightly more than the actual movie had to offer. That is how we got Deathstalker, and to be fair, it is not bad at all. The box office seems to agree. The movie was made for around $457,000 and brought back over $5 million, with some sources putting the theatrical gross even higher. That success is also what turned Deathstalker into a small franchise. 3 sequels followed. Deathstalker was shot in Argentina with Ares, a local production company that became Corman's partner on a whole run of low-budget films, including a couple that will show up later in this video. The director was first-time feature filmmaker James Spartalotti, credited here as John Watson. The whole shoot took 37 days. The plot follows a warrior named Deathstalker who is sent to find 3 magical objects: a sword, an amulet, and a chalice. If they are brought together, they give their owner great power. Of course, an evil sorcerer named Munkar wants them too, so there is no shortage of fighting. It also brought Lana Clarkson into this little Corman fantasy world, and we will definitely come back to her later. Italy was not ignoring the Conan-era fantasy wave either. In 1983, Lucio Fulci made Conquest, which reached American theaters in April 1984. And the result is very strange. Fulci's disregard for clear storytelling means that, a lot of the time, it is genuinely hard to understand what is happening, which, of course, makes it absolutely necessary for this video. The plot follows a young man with a magical bow, sent out to find his destiny. Along the way, he enters a land where small tribes are terrorized by an evil masked queen and her beastmen. He is saved by a barbarian named Mace, and the two of them continue the journey together, while the queen sends more creatures after them. The cheapness is definitely visible, and most people would probably call Conquest junk. But the right viewer can still find things to enjoy here. At least it is more interesting than a lot of the other Italian knockoffs in this genre. We should also make room for Hundra. This one was made mostly in Spain, directed by Matt Cimber, with Lorene Landon as Hundra, the last survivor of an all-female warrior tribe. After her village is slaughtered, Hundra sets out to keep the tribe alive, which means entering the world of men and finding a suitable partner. So yes, structurally, it is Conan. But with a female warrior at the center, it also feels closer to Red Sonja than the actual Red Sonja movie would a couple of years later. One of the better production stories involves this scene, which Landon originally refused to do. They used a body double, but the footage looked so obviously wrong that Landon changed her mind. Her reaction was basically, "My ass isn't that big. I'll do it myself." She later suspected Cimber may have planned it that way, but of course, we will never know. Now we need to go back to Roger Corman and Ares in Argentina. After Deathstalker, The Warrior and the Sorceress became the next film in that little arrangement. The project started with director John C. Broderick, who approached fantasy artist William Stout to create some presentation art for a possible movie based on John Norman's Gore novels. Stout knew sword and sorcery well, and Broderick eventually asked him to write the script. But instead of making a straight Gore movie, they ended up using Yojimbo as the basic model. The script went through several versions and titles, including Dark Sword of Tor and Cain of the Dark Planet. When Stout finally saw the finished film, he was not exactly thrilled. He later said Broderick had changed the dialogue he had worked on for so long, and the plot as well. David Carradine plays Cain, a wandering warrior who arrives in a desert village where two rival warlords are fighting over the only well. He offers his sword to the highest bidder and starts playing both sides against each other. There is also Nadja, the sorceress, held captive by one of the warlords. So it is not especially original. What people usually remember most is Maria Sokas, who spends much of the film topless, along with several other actresses in smaller roles in various states of nudity. Carradine later said Broderick was obsessed with Sokas's body, and that is why he dressed her that way. Everywhere you looked, as Carradine put it, there was this bare-breasted woman. A cult classic, obviously, but critics at the time preferred a different phrase. The Philadelphia Inquirer called it an unashamedly sordid rehashing and retrashing of Yojimbo, which is rude, but not completely wrong. And here we finally get back to Lana Clarkson. After Deathstalker, Corman brought her back to star in Barbarian Queen, directed by Hector Oliveira, and made as part of the same low-budget sword and sorcery run in Argentina. Corman later reportedly claimed that the title character helped inspire Xena Warrior Princess, which is a pretty bold legacy claim, but not an impossible one. The plot centers on Amathea, who is about to marry Prince Argon when her village is attacked by the forces of an evil ruler. Argon is captured, the village is destroyed, and Amathea sets out with a few surviving women to rescue the prisoners and take revenge. One critic found a way to give it an ironic, positive review without pretending it was respectable. Joe Bob Briggs wrote that it was no Conan the Barbarian 2, but it had what it needed. 46 breasts, including 2 on the male lead, 31 dead bodies, rolling heads, and a few other attractions, including sword fu, torch fu, and thigh fu. If that description does not convince you, I honestly do not know what will. And yes, There was a follow-up. Please appreciate the title, Barbarian Queen 2: The Empress Strikes Back. It was sold as a sequel, but the plot and characters had almost nothing to do with the first film. The main connection was Lana Clarkson, who came back in the lead role.